You okay?
Bro's muted. Oh,
No. No.
okay, sure. Uh-huh. Okay. I'll take your word for that.
Okay, sheep.
Sheeple. Sucking at the teat, baby.
Yeah, bro. I love sucking at teats.
Roland, Roland, have I ever told you that, there's something wrong with you? Genuinely.
Probably. You probably have.
But you're not
Well,
understanding
I
the
have a
point,
right to take from
muffler.
you, so don't take from me. That should be the principle of any invasion of that.
Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. That's not what happens though. What I'm saying is that instead of
What happened with
there
that woman?
instead of it being that
Okay.
what's up, Crimson?
What's happened?
What's going on?
Here I am.
Happened.
Oh shit. Okay. So the reason I asked for the link, I'm not really all that mad, is because I want to be able to respond to this in real time. First of all, you have to define wealth when you're talking about this. That's the big issue to start with. So,
What
what
I
is your
mean by
definition
wealth.
of wealth?
So it wasn't so much wealth. What I was trying to say is that, and you can feel free to try to correct me, but there are a few people who, under capitalism, have accrued so much money. And what I'm saying is, I don't want them to lose all of their money, but for people that work hard, I want everyone who tries to be able to have to also get in a little slice of pie too. So therefore, if someone has $470 billion, maybe they can go down to 300 billion, and you could give someone who needs to have a life-saving operation a chance at living. That's what I'm saying. It's that
Okay,
the wealth
but you're talking about wealth, not you still haven't defined what wealth actually is. You're dodging the question repeatedly.
Wealth
Because
is
when people talk about wealthy and having a net worth, do you know what net worth is?
it's someone's total accumulation of their capital, isn't it? It's like how much they have.
No, it is the net worth of all their assets.
Yeah, net worth is
liquid and not. That includes stocks, your house, your cars, literally anything that has monetary value is added to your net worth.
Yeah, that means your
billionaire's net worth is also determined by the companies they own. That's why Elon Musk is a billionaire, because he owns multiple billion-dollar companies. Okay? So there's the big issue I have with all of this. It's not so much that I don't
Damn,
and I'm siding with some billionaire hoarding a bunch of wealth. It is the fact that people who talk about this fundamentally don't understand that by trying to quote unquote redistribute wealth, you're going to fuck, and I mean like raw dog anal fuck the economy by trying to take everyone's property and redistribute it. That is my big opposition to this. Because you want to tax billionaires? Okay, well here's the thing: is you don't. Yeah,
it's a billionaire's property. That's not everybody's. It's a billionaire's. It's not everybody's.
Okay, well here's the thing: is a lot of that net worth you want to. I'm assuming you want to tax them based on their net worth, right? Like they own so many. They are worth so many billions of dollars, so they're taxed at that amount. The issue is once you start doing these ridiculous wealth taxes and redistribute, they don't earn billions of dollars, though. That's the thing. These people don't earn anything. They have like zero income because they operate on a principle called buy, borrow, die. And basically, they're just taking out loans and living on that.
The point is that they have.
So are you going to eliminate debt from tax exemptions? Because a lot of companies survive on using their debt to lower their own taxes. My family's business does that. This turns into a huge, complicated problem. I mean, sure, the ideals are nice. Like, I'm not opposed to the idea of, helping people out, but that's where private charity and stuff comes in. That's where I'm more inclined to be like, I think people should be willing to do this rather than be forced at gunpoint, especially because I don't trust the government to spend that money well.
But no one does, though. No one does, though.
Make them do it.
Sure.
See?
And that's a cultural failing. And I think that if you have the means to help people, it's a nice thing to do. You're not obligated to do it though, because I mean, am I obligated to give you $100 because you need it?
No, I said $100.
Are you obligated to my excess money because you need it more, Roman? That's the question.
I think we should all help each other. Do I think that I'm necessarily entitled to it? No, but I think that we all should help each other.
That's not an answer to the question.
Roman, not everybody's a good
Okay,
person.
cool. Because if you think you're entitled to someone else's property because you need it more, you're effectively arguing that you don't believe in private property whatsoever. Because if I work my ass off to make myself rich, and then all of a sudden someone tells me that they're entitled to my money just because they exist, fuck no. I put in the effort, you didn't. There's a lot of these complicated things you start getting into when you start preaching about this stuff, and you want to push it all the way up to the billionaires without actually realizing what the fuck is going on with any of this stuff and the implications of your very own policies. This is why, when it comes down to it, I can't help but be anything but a small government capitalist, because I would rather people have the opportunity to make something for themselves rather than have the government try and come in and redistribute everything, because, well, we've seen how that's gone. And it always ends up with the politicians greasing their pockets. Hey, guess what? I'm from Illinois, and we have one of the most corrupt governments in this fucking country. So I don't know how many of our governors, Republicans and Democrats, by the way, have gone down because they've been taking money out of the system for themselves.
They just want all your corn.
Crimson.
No, I wish someone wanted all our fucking corn.
Crimson got the joke. Nobody else did. But
let Roman speak. Let Roman speak.
To your point, you said that what it would end up being is that, politicians line their own pockets. Bro, they do that anyway. I don't see that as a reasonable justification for not. And like me, I am more so just of like the mindset that like I wouldn't even like I was memeing earlier when I said that like I'm a full-blown socialist. I more so believe in keeping most of capitalism, but giving it that like people that work hard should have a shot to survive. Because like people now, people like you, people like me, people like Roland, it's getting harder for us all to survive. Not even just live, survive. So the thing is that I want everyone to be able to survive and maybe have a chance of living a little bit and not just surviving. And if I'm radical for that view, fine. But that's my view. And that's
I don't think that's entirely a radical view. I just think it's a misinformed view. Because, well, again, you're either trading you're either going with capitalism, which gives you your billionaire business owners who have their own host of issues. Like I said, buy, borrow, die. As much as it's a scummy thing to do, it is a part of the system. Or you trade it for, rich politicians. It's
they're already rich though.
It's a coin flip.
They're already rich though. Yeah. I get what
Do you want your upper class to be politicians or business owners? Is effectively the question I'm asking.
Yeah, that's the right.
Like with the housing thing. That is a BlackRock problem. I would agree
They
because
already
I'm in the
are
middle
rich.
of doing some stuff as far
They
that
already are
again,
rich.
if that's your comment, then like you're
Am I wrong?
we'll get to that. Well, no, you're not. And I'll get to that in a bit. The reason they're rich is effectively because of the government's own policy, which is again why everyone else suffers. Inflation. That's the biggest issue with why people have trouble keeping up with living expenses and all that. Why our generation is getting screwed. The housing thing with BlackRock, I just mentioned that is a legitimate like business issue, but that comes with the question of okay, so are you going to then ruin the entire real estate market by making it a bad idea to invest in a proper house? Because then you're screwing over middle class people too. To disincentivize BlackRock from getting a house would hurt like a lot of the poors as you would much more than it would hurt BlackRock. That BlackRock would just find another way to invest their money to reduce their tax burden.
Yeah,
that's half the reason they buy property is because property is an appreciating asset.
I can see where you're coming from, and I would say that I half agree with you, but I also think that it's kind of like, and I'm not getting deeper into what I'm about to say, but it's kind of like how people are saying when it comes to the tariffs that like, um, you know, temporary pain will be worth the long-term gain. In my scenario, the short-term pain would be worth the long-term gain. Having it be that BlackRock no longer controls housing would infinitely be better than them controlling housing because BlackRock does not help people. So,
company
what?
organization. I said they're a terrible.
Yes, but it's also arguable as to whether the government helps people. I mean,
Yeah,
there are still J6ers who are being held without charge. So, and all the governments that our intelligence agency has destabilized.
I mean, the CIA
and all the people that
Everybody-
emergency services refused to help last year when that hurricane hit and wiped out several towns on the in the south, and people were disincentivized by emergency responders to actually help and even threatened with legal time. You want to view government as this I don't know, like benevolent entity. I'm more skeptical to that because as much as companies as much as we do need some business regulation, I'm not a full-on anarchist. I do think there are legitimate reasons to have a government, and there are legitimate reasons to have rules and all that.
Yeah, I agree.
And I just realized I never changed from the power for president.
Yeah, I was thinking this is a perfect profile picture. Where do you find that one at?
Yeah. I can send you the artist, but he draws some fucked up shit.
To your broader point though, I think you brought this up earlier. The thing is that you say it'll change that everyone will lose their property, the middle class will be crushed. Respectfully, countries, and I know y'all are gonna roll your eyes, but this is factual. Countries like Denmark, countries like Sweden, countries like Norway have done what I am talking about, and their middle classes thrive. They are some of the happiest people. They all can afford to live, not just survive, live. America is so much further behind than these countries, and they literally do exactly what I said, and their middle classes are not crushed. So I get where you're coming from, but there's also evidence of countries doing what I have said, and they're fine.
Well, don't get me wrong.
They also outsource every bit of their national security to the U.S. So
yeah, and
NATO and all that. That's why they're so upset about having to pay for it.
Well, the other thing that I'm gonna say too is don't get me wrong. I think there shouldn't be a single homeless veteran on the fucking streets. I don't think there should be homeless people in the United States, but there is. That's the fact of the matter. There is, and that's a problem that like needs to be fixed because, like, we shouldn't have people that fought for our country end up homeless. That's fucked up.
And if I say that we should house them all, then not you guys, but people will say that I'm radical for saying that everyone should have housing.
All right, but I will compromise on that with this. I would rather us spend all the money we're giving to. I'll play the political correct game, the undocumented immigrants. I would rather us spend all that money on all of these vets who actually fought for our country and did something for us than people who jumped the border and decided to suck up benefits.
Yes, I would agree with that.
I'm not saying
there's a compromise for you. Let's go with that. How do you feel about that one?
I'm not saying that you're wrong, but we spend a lot more money on war unnecessarily.
Correct.
Yeah, and it costs me know why? That's why we have so many homeless veterans.
Yeah.
Because the world wants us to simultaneously be its police and not at the same time. Yes. They want us to solve all the problems when they feel endangered by Russia and China. But when we decide to actually fend for ourselves and fight for our own national security, which not all of is entirely justified. I don't think our forever wars in the Middle East are even like a great idea. It's because that's some bullshit.
It's because we beat England and then we nuked Japan. That's why. And we were also kicking ass in Europe at the same time as when we nuked Japan. So they were like, okay, fuck.
And also
wins. And that's why America is like looked at the way that it is now.
And also there's also an even simpler view. It's literally just the fact that like Raytheon and Boeing and like all of the defense contractors buy most of our politicians, and so therefore the politicians who literally knew that the Iraq war was a lie voted to send us there and then voted to keep us fighting there, and people, our own soldiers, died unnecessarily for nothing.
So, yes, and lobbying is something that I do not like either. I would be perfectly fine ending lobbying. Also, because politicians who work in there make a lot of their money by taking donations from these companies and then go to work for those companies because they, as a lobbyist, because they have all those connections. That's another part of the corruption that I'm perfectly fine cutting out. That would be like my first thing. If I had all the power to do whatever I wanted, that would be like one of the first things that I would do is be like, all right, you know what? Lobbying is now illegal. Goodbye.
You know what you're advocating for? Do you know what you're advocating for? It's called campaign finance reform. And do you want to know who has been fighting for campaign finance reform? The guy that is my profile picture. That is like one of his like main things is campaign finance reform, because if you can get,
but I still think he's an economic retard because of his wealth tax propositions that he's had alongside Elizabeth Warren and his tax the millionaires and the billionaires.
Well,
which again is one of those things where it's profoundly misunderstood.
I like what Muffler Tape has to say here because he's not wrong. We effectively have an empire that spans half the globe due to the petrodollar and our alliances like NATO. He's not wrong. We have bases all over the planet.
Yeah, but
this is the thing about politics. As much as I disagree with you, I don't find the sentiment behind your politics revolting. In fact, a lot of it I think comes from a good place.
Yes, at least Roman is like thinking about people. You know, he's not being an asshole and saying I hate you because you have a different opinion. Like,
yeah. That's one of the things. I think you do genuinely care about people, and your politics reflect an ideology that actually wants to help people. I think that's a good place. I just disagree with the methodology. I would much rather start at a point, or ideally, it would be nice with people actually caring about things and doing things, but I don't know. It's part of the whole cultural decay. You have a bunch of people who no longer have any morals outside of looking at themselves. That's one of the big problems is if you're going to have a perfectly free society, if you're going to have a country that is effectively self-governed or down to the individual level where everyone has to run their own lives and be responsible for the things they do, you need to have some sort of moral backbone. And I would argue that we don't really have that anymore, whereas before, I don't know, World War II, we kind of did.
It's a shame, but yeah, I also think, and this is on both sides, and I think it needs to stop, is that people aren't willing to listen to each other. And like that's kind of the thing, is that like we can't function as a society if we don't hear other people's views. Like me, I do not agree with the thing that he says, but I listen to Ben Shapiro whenever I can so that I hear a different perspective outside of mine, because I want to hear how people that are not aligned with me are thinking.
I don't agree
And
with you.
I was about to say I don't even really care about Ben Shapiro at all. The last time I did would have been like, I don't know, 2018.
The only time,
Well,
the last time that I watched him was when he interviewed Critical Drinker.
well, here's like
I didn't
so
know he did that.
Yeah.
so here's like my thing. So a long time ago, Roland said that he thinks that I'm a centrist, which after that
I think
I
you are.
decided to take. Okay, listen to me. I decided to take a political compass test. I am in the center socially, not, economically. Like, I want, the government to stay out of people's business socially. But I think that they should be able to help people um economically. But to my broader point, I used to be a Trumper a long time ago when I was younger. And I think I'm the inverse of a lot of people, because people now support Trump who didn't prior. I no longer do, and I used to. So
But
I
what's
just think
nice
that,
about you, Roman, is that you will admit if he does something that's good.
yeah, but he personally screwed over my family. So he did, yes, I will, but he doesn't get that sentiment from me currently.
It
But
wasn't personally, but
But if he's helped people, sure, fine, yes. But the thing is that I I think that what it comes down to for me ultimately is my faith, because my faith tells me to have empathy for all people, and I think everyone should have basic um should have basic things like food and clothing and shelter and such. And so that's where my values come from, is faith. But
So so just to like, I get it. I disagree with the application of faith to politics in that regard, because at the end of the day, food, clothing, shelter, those are all goods and services that people have to work to provide. And if you follow that logic of, well, I'm entitled to food and clothing, that's effectively saying that you're okay with taking the product of someone's labor, which I don't think you really, like as a principle, would stand for. It's just it's just one of those philosophical things where you start thinking about it, or at least I did start thinking about it, because surprise, surprise, I was far more centrist back before I started really getting into politics in 2016. I looked at a lot of Bernie stuff and I was like, all right, that sounds okay. And then I got my first paycheck and all the taxes deducted on it, and yeah. Um, I also am much closer to someone who runs a business, so I see a lot of the tax stuff and all that happens, and I get a lot of the finance input. So as far as the policies go, the deregulation and stuff that happened under Trump really helped my family and our business.
sure, yeah.
So
I mean,
it's one
yeah,
of those things where like the best way to improve people's lives is to get them to the point where they can improve themselves. That's not going to apply to everyone. I get that, because there are people who are disabled and can't do anything. That's where the private charitable acts is really important. And we're having a tight knit society is important. And I think that well, the state of the country is largely due to a cultural / moral issue than any sort of political issue. Is there are a lot of things that can basically just be tied back to people wanting to kick the problem down the road, and now we're dealing with the
Yeah.
consequences.
Yeah. People don't want to face the issue head on, and I think that this country is rotting because of it. And I think that um to your earlier point though, you said that you think it should be through private charities that help people. And I don't I'm not putting words into your mouth, but I'm asking a question. Are you saying that like there shouldn't are are you saying that like people should not be entitled to like social security, Medicaid, and like Medicare and such? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that a lot of these things that people want to push as rights aren't actually rights. When it comes to that stuff, um, uh, when I say things should be done through charity, not specifically through organizations, I mean people should genuinely be willing to help each other out of their own pocket rather than pawning that responsibility off on the government. I'll give an example. A good friend of mine was in a really, really bad accident and almost died. He basically
Yeah.
fell out of a truck and split his head open. This was a couple of years back. And it literally almost killed him. It was bad, and his family couldn't afford the bills. Well,
Yeah.
everyone who was in our community basically pitched in a little bit of money to pay for the medical bills and get him treated and all that. That's the kind of stuff I would like to see out of this, is communities actually
That's awesome.
caring about each other. Pawning that
That
responsibility off on the government in the form of, like, let's just say like Medicaid or socialized healthcare. Sure, it sounds nice, but the consequence is you're again, furthering people away from each other in a community, and it just pawns that responsibility of actually caring about your neighbor, which I'm assuming you are a Christian, right? I think you've said that in
yes.
the past.
Yep.
Yeah. So love your neighbor does not mean that you're giving that responsibility to someone else and making yourself feel good. It means you're actually taking the responsibility into your own hand to try and do something to help them. That is my issue with it.
I and I see where you are coming from, and I do not disagree with your sentiment. But what I would say is that, and maybe I just have a more not bitter, but a more pessimistic worldview in the sense that people are not going to be charitable.
Really quickly, I will admit that this whole thing I've said is pretty idealistic. That's one of the big flaws with my own argument here, is it
Sa-
is almost
Same with
an
mine.
idealistic argument.
The thing with my thing is, Crimson, is that my whole thing is in like a perfect like utopia world. The thing that I want will never happen because, America's too corrupted and broken. But to to your point, humans, I think, have a penchant for good, but there are too many people that are selfish and only think about themselves. So by loving my neighbor, what I would want is I would advocate for my neighbor to if they need it, have, you know, healthcare if, they're sick, because no one should go broke. We are the only country on earth, the only major country. I want to correct myself, the only major country on earth where people have medical debt. You don't hear about that in any other country. And so people should not have to go
Yeah, but you do
broke.
hear about forced euthanasia and 6-month wait times for essential surgeries.
Yeah.
How many, how, what is considered essential? Because yes, I have heard stories about like people wanting to get their noses done and having to wait 8 or 9 months for it. But like, if you go into a hospital in Canada and you're
Oh no,
having
I'm
like
not talking about that. I'm talking about people going in for treatment for an illness and being told they have to wait 6 or 9 months. Hey, how about this? There have been multiple cases in the UK where people have gone, have or I don't know if it's the UK, but there's some European country where they have socialized medicine, and the doctors effectively determined that it wasn't worth the effort to save a family's child, so they denied them any access and basically put them on hospice. Well, there was one case that went so far as to the Vatican actually got involved and offered to send the family to another country where they could get the service, but the government of their country would not allow them to because they had already written them off. That's one of the things that that is hype that can be basically used as propaganda. I don't think it's a very common thing, but it is a thing. And I do agree with you that the expenses of American healthcare are astronomical. But I don't think, again, I do not think love your neighbor is advocating for someone else to do something. It is doing it yourself.
I understand that. But also just and like I'm not saying this like, in like in argument sense, but I'm just gonna counter something that like you said, even though you said that it's not common, bro. When I had my appendectomy, they told me that I didn't have to have my surgery, that I should wait a week. And this is our current system. And if I hadn't gotten it, I could have died. And they told me that it was not a life-saving surgery. I could have died. They were the, it was so much turmoil in our current system. Our current system, our current healthcare system is broken beyond belief. So I think that in order for people to truly have a chance, there should at least you shouldn't you shouldn't give up everything you have to survive if you're sick. That should not be a thing. And more often than not, that is what happens in this country. And it shouldn't be that. It shouldn't be that. That's just my own
Yeah,
point.
you're right. It shouldn't be that. But that effectively equates to I mean, whoever was diagnosing you was clearly fucking retarded. I've had appendicitis and I actually almost died from it myself.
Yeah.
Like if I
Yeah.
I went in the day I came down with like the really bad sickness part of it, and they said
Mhm.
like it was pretty close to rupturing. So yeah, I've been
Yep.
there, done that. It's not fun.
Nope.
Um
No, that he did that, or that happened to him, like while we were doing the podcast. Not while we were doing it, but like we talked about it on the podcast. I think.
so my
Yeah.
question is, were you a fan of Obamacare, or at least the
I
the
was a
the
fan
plan
of
as
I
proposed?
was so actually no. I because Obama copied it from something that Mitt Romney did. I'm not a fan of the individual mandate because it like essentially penalizes you for not having health care. I'm not I'm not a fan of that. What I want to do is not penalize people for not having health care. I want to guarantee that all people have it. That is what I want. And not penalize people for not having it because in my scenario everyone has it, so you don't get penalized for not having it. And that was the GOP that came up with that is why Obamacare, while it was in practice a quote unquote attempt, it sucked because it was a half measure. It wasn't truly a healthcare plan. So no, I was not a fan.
It was a half measure, basically pitched as the full deal. Ignore that. That was shit falling off my desk as I moved my mic. Um, but yeah, Obamacare screwed my family over, or at least my
Yeah,
mother. Made it
yeah.
really, really hard for her to get hip surgery. She basically walked around for like 5 years with no cartilage in her left hip.
Damn.
What?
Yeah.
And so, let me ask you: did it screw her over because she didn't have a healthcare plan? Is that why?
having the healthcare plan was more expensive than just not. But we were kind of caught in a gray area, effectively, where either way we couldn't afford to get her hip surgery. Up until my dad was able to implement a proper like medical insurance plan through the company that he was able to use to take care of all that stuff.
Right. And
So
so like
that was effectively the way that got resolved. But a lot of the issues
thing,
that we ran into were effectively government caused because of Obamacare,
Yeah.
because of the mandate, because of all that stuff.
yeah.
And look, as far as that goes, it is an issue, the pricing. But at the same time, there are a lot of countries where like you either there's a bunch of things that we do have to kind of go over with this. Like I said, there are the wait times, and there are like the Canadian healthcare issues of
I'm not saying that those aren't
forced
real.
euthanasia. No, those
Yeah.
are admittedly the it seems like more the exception to the rule, but this free healthcare idea does require a high trust society. Why does something like this generally work in Japan or other countries? Because, well, for the longest time, they've been high trust societies. And in the United States, we're not really the same. People are more likely to game the system than not. That's why a lot of these healthcare systems end up actually getting overburdened by people using or going to the doctor for simple things like a cold.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that
True.
begs the question: is we're a massive country compared to a lot of these European countries. I mean, we have like 10 to 20 times their population in some cases.
Yeah, I don't go to the doctor really unless I really need to.
How many we are already I have friends and family who are nurses who work in that
Kind of just fight it off.
they're already swamped with work. It's already a busy lifestyle.
Oh, dude, I know a lot about it because my dad has to go to the hospital like once a week at least because of all like cancers that he's had and shit.
Yeah, as shitty as it is to people who can't afford it, one of the things that you have to deal with is at some point your system has to give. And if you're not giving in any of those three categories that I've talked about, or well, with the wait times, with the pricing, or with effectively like screening for people, deciding who gets healthcare and who doesn't, rationing effectively, you're going to have to give somewhere else, somewhere unknown, and who knows what that's going to be.
Our system is close to giving now, though. Our system is close to giving now.
No, what I mean,
know what I mean?
I don't mean as giving as in completely giving out. There definitely does need to be some issues with it, and my cousin has actually talked a little bit about like the reason doctors part of the issue with like medical care in the United States is being a doctor almost isn't worth it with how much you have to pay for like doctor's insurance and stuff. My cousin was talking basically the reason he became a nurse/nurse practitioner was it just wasn't worth it to become a doctor because of all of the legal stuff that you have to protect yourself from if you're a doctor. I don't think that's fair to the people who work their asses off to become a doctor because they're passionate about saving people's lives. And then they have to charge all that money because, well, they actually have to be able to pay for all the stuff that they're required to have in order to operate as a doctor.
Yeah.
Red tape, bureaucracy.
However, you said that like you're worried about people being like denied and or rationed care. The thing about that is that literally the insurance companies in our country literally decide who can and who will and will not get cared for. It's all up to
and the insurance companies
company.
are the other half of the problem as to why our healthcare skyrocketed so much. Fuck them too.
Yeah.
Fuck the insurance companies too. Look, I don't think that there is like one issue where like it's either government or business in this regard, as much as some of what I've said earlier might have implied that. I think they're both going hand in hand to fuck everyone over. A company exists to make money. Okay?
Yep.
That's what they do. They're going to find whatever they can do to make money. That's why you have a lot of the like I mean, look at what happened with fucking FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried. The guy thought he found an infinite money glitch and was printing infinite money, only to have the whole thing come crashing down on him and create one of the biggest crypto scams in history.
I am so glad that that dude got caught. I am so happy about that.
Yeah. Um,
But
So yeah,
like,
I don't think it's specifically just government. I mean, there's a business aspect to it too, and it's the same thing with like college. And what people don't understand is the moment the government got involved with like giving out student loans and all that, college prices skyrocketed because they realized now that there were a bunch of people who had access to it, and Big Brother was going to guarantee that they had the money to do it, they could charge more. And then there became the book scam, where professors would basically require you to buy a specific edition of a book every year, and they would constantly, they'll charge you an arm and a leg for a single fucking textbook when you have like 8 classes in a semester. God, I
I
hate
can,
that.
yeah, I I went into debt for community college. Like
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Well, so did I, but it wasn't that much debt, so I'm fortunate to have been able to work through all of that. And uh, yeah,
But like to the broader point though, I think that and yes, is what I'm saying like pie in the sky. M- all of my ideas would only be in a utopia world because that's not going to happen in our current country. It's just not. But I think overall that the positives outweigh the negatives when it comes to making a universal healthcare system because I think overall it would help more people than hurt. And I also think um that not trying something out of fear is worse than trying something and failing. And I
I
think
think not
that
trying something out of fear is worse than trying something and have the government use it to control people. Because
yeah,
that's one of the big issues that I run into every time someone starts talking about giving the government a hand in something. Like I said, there are certain things that I do think the government is needed for. When it comes to like business stuff, there has to be rules, otherwise people will do whatever they want. I mean, there's a whole reason we like Theodore Roosevelt ended up having to start up a bunch of anti-monopoly laws
yep.
because that shit was crazy. And monopolies are not good; they're not healthy, um, and they're anti-competitive. And in a sense, I guess you could argue anti-capitalist, even though that kind of comes out of the if one person gets really good at something and kills all their competition, well, that's kind of the nature of it. But
Yeah. That's
but
yeah.
I am less prone to trusting the government because, well, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and we've seen our government's track record. If you trust them, well, I have a story to tell you. It's called "The History of the Native American."
I
With
I
how many treaties
I
our government has made and betrayed with those people.
the the thing that I'm saying is that and I'm not even disagreeing with you, but what I would say is and I'm not even talking about population size here, but like take like Sweden. 99% of their people vote. Um they have a much more open media. They are freer in terms of being able to protest without like worrying about whether they're going to be taken out by their government and such. They are free. They are more free than we are, and they are what we would call a social democracy or a democratic socialist country, and they are in many more ways freer than we are, and we are what you would call a, I guess, a democracy or a capitalist democracy. And so when you look at that, I think that my personal philosophies, just my personal point of view, makes us freer than we currently are now because I don't think that we are free now. I think that we are allowed to live but not free. That's that's just my view.
Interesting.
I don't know if I agree with that, especially because with the way that I know a lot of these European countries do censor a lot of shit and have hate speech laws and all that stuff. I don't know how I feel about that. Plus, I mean, Sweden's an interesting case right now. You can find a whole lot of problems with any of this stuff.
Well,
My
there's
point
problems.
is,
There's
my
problems with
point
everything.
in all of this, I am more inclined to try towards individuals taking charge of their own life rather than again pawning off all that responsibility on the government. I
And
don't really know enough about Sweden in specific to uh, say a whole lot, other than the fact that I think they actually have more competitive corporate tax rates than the U.S. If I remember correctly, their corporate tax rates are much lower, so they don't actually.
are they?
I believe so. I would have to double check that. Last time I looked at this would have been, I don't know, 6 years ago when I was looking at when people were bringing up Sweden and all that stuff. It would be one of those things where, I don't know, I would have to look at it more, and I just don't care enough about politics to really, really get into that.
So
Um,
they are 0.9% below us. So they're not that much lower. We're at
uh,
21 we're at 21%, but Trump's about to lower that to 17%, and then Sweden's at 20.02%. So they're not that much
I'm
lower.
curious right now.
I mean, you could say the same thing about, J6 2021. I mean, the people that killed Officer Brian Sicknick are free now, so hey, freedom for all, right? I mean, Brian Brian Sicknick got punched in his head, thrown into a guardrail, and murdered, and the people that murdered him are free. So yeah, freedom, freedom for all people, wonderful. I bet that doesn't get brought up though, does it, Pilgrim? Sorry, that made me mad. But yeah, S- Sweden's corporate tax rate is like 0.9% less than ours is.
Yeah, well, the effective average tax rate between the two countries, the U.S. is like half of what Sweden's is, which
Mm.
means that on average we pay 50% less taxes, or they pay double the amount of taxes we do. So there's your trade-off: is you're paying much more in taxes out of your own income. I don't
Well,
know how that's actually going to play out. This would be something that more than just a quick Google search on that is probably going to be required. But that would be my first point of uh, reference is okay, take your average Joe in both countries and see how much they actually pay in taxes. And in my understanding, it looks like the average Joe in Sweden pays more in taxes for the same benefits, or for not the same benefits, but for these benefits, double the amount of taxes effectively.
I mean, the thing is that I think
And to your point about the J6 guys who beat up an officer, um,
not beat
I
up,
don't. I don't
murdered him, murdered.
yes, sure. Um, that is something I haven't heard about. I do know that there were some people who were involved who just weren't great people overall. But yeah, if you kill someone, you deserve jail time. I would completely agree with that. But at the same time, there are a lot of people who firebombed stores during the summer of love and never saw anything for it.
Right.
I'm saying that all violent people, no matter who, should, be in jail. I got no problem saying that. I just My whole thing is that I just don't like double standards. Like,
Neither do I.
yeah, and like if someone aligns with a certain side and their side commits violence, but they only chastise the side that they don't like, then I don't like that. Like me, how can I be of how 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 can I be a fan of what Martin Luther King did? Non-violent, peaceful protest, and then say, yeah, I also love that 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 people that I agree with politically are firebombing dealerships of Tesla and such. How can I, as someone who loves peaceful protest, say that? That's not right. So I think that anybody that is violent should absolutely be locked up, and they should not be pardoned.
Yeah. Well, it's really going to have to depend on the nature because, I mean, if we're talking about violence just in the fact that someone initiates violence against another person, like someone just randomly decides to go beat the shit out of someone, yeah, I would absolutely agree. But if you're talking about
Yeah.
violence in the form of self-defense, like I've seen people who have defended themselves from like being attacked by a group of like gangsters, and
Mm.
then they got arrested and put in jail for it.
Nah, like I'm more so talking about people that riot, that cause violence through like rioting and
Yes,
such.
I would agree. Um, as far as like the J6 stuff goes, I think it was stupid for people to have gone into the Capitol regardless of how it all happened. Regardless of whether you buy the story that they were let in or not, I think it was stupid for people to go in and do the shit that they did. Because
Yeah,
how is
because
it not going to have consequences?
yeah, like
And like there was I believe a federal agent who in all of that who shot and killed someone unjustly. And then we have Brian Sicknick getting killed in all of this. It's I agree. I don't like violence. That's part of the reason why I think the U.S.'s wars across the world are a huge effing problem. And I think I agree with the Europeans on this one. We should stop being everyone's hall monitor and just worry about ourselves and let them deal with Russia. It's not our problem.
yeah.
That's a European problem.
Well, but that all goes back to the problem that we have this notion that we are the greatest country in the whole world, and in many ways I'm not saying this as a slight against our country, so y'all chill, but we think that we're the greatest country in the whole world, and that we can do anything that we want to without any consequence. But the problem is that the world, um I, I think at this point they don't want us to be the police of the world, and we shouldn't be, because we have problems here at home that we don't focus on, because we are too busy running around trying to make every country the world's America, and not not worrying about like our own people. So
No,
I
I
don't know. I
agree.
think
As far as America being the greatest country ever goes, I love my country. I'm not particularly happy with the way my countrymen go abroad and act like fucking jackasses to other people's cultures and act like they can get
Yeah.
away with whatever they want because they're Americans. Americans are entitled pieces of shit when they go abroad. At one point, I would say the U.S. was the greatest country in the world. Would I say it now? Probably not. I mean, like you said, we got problems here. Um, it doesn't make me love my country any less. It doesn't make me any less proud to be an American. I'm just disappointed in the way many Americans behave. I'm looking at you, Johnny fucking Somali.
Yep.
So yeah, it's I am entirely fine with not getting involved with other people's wars. I'm perfectly fine with that. I think that would be a great way to, start this whole defunding thing. I think I said in your chat at one point when we were talking about like Doge or something, how Elon Musk won't touch his own government contracts for SpaceX.
Nope.
No, I think that's kind of hypocritical there too. Or like them,
And
like I believe they cut funding to NASA as well, which is kind of stupid because NASA
and
receives like a tenth of a cent on the dollar out of our
and
fund, out of our
why
budget.
and why did they cut NASA funding? So that Elon could run it all with SpaceX. Exactly why. That they'll say that it's an official reason, but have has has anyone connected with the waste that Doge allegedly found? I'm not saying that they didn't find any, but why hasn't anybody been arrested with like, connections to the waste and the, corruption and the crimes and stuff like that? Like, and the reason is because they found waste, but the system still is biased towards those people that are committing them. What I'm telling you guys, and you all will understand it soon, is that Doge is a smoke screen. It's not real. It's not real. It's all just a distraction to look like they're doing stuff, but they're really not. It's all just a it's all just a it's all just a consolidation of power. I'm I'm telling you guys. But I, digress. I don't want to go on about this for, the whole night. I really don't. I got work in set. I got work in 9 hours. I got work in 9 hours. I really don't want to go on about this for the
No,
whole night.
I won't drag it out any further. It was just one of those things where it's much easier to have the conversation face to face rather than try and type out a point in the chat.
I understand that 100%. And
The last thing I wanted to do was sit here and discuss politics until like 9:15 at night.
Well, it was so enjoyable.
Yeah,
you sound like you have a headache, Rolo.
To be fair to him, Crimson, he's been friends with me for the last like 13 years, so I mean, that's bound to happen to him at some point. But I genuinely though,
make yourself a snack and go to sleep.
Yeah. Rolo was playing games.
No, I should have been for that entire conversation though.
You should have been playing Oblivion, dude.
I should have been playing Oblivion that entire time, but I wanted to take my time when I first.
Man, I was fucking playing Minecraft, and then I heard something about wealth and tax, and I was like, all right, you know what? Kidding. Except for the Minecraft part. The Minecraft part, I was serious about. I actually was playing that.
Well, no, but I actually do